Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Community Podcast. My name is Zander, and I'll be hosting today's episode. My pronouns are they, them. I'm joined by Bala and Nivay, whose pronouns are both he, him, coming directly from the Just Love Forest Ashram in Poetry, Georgia. Hey, all.
Hello. ISCP.
Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you.
It's really an honor having you here. I know you're literally, quite literally in the middle of a forest. So I feel really grateful that the magic of technology exists and we can have this conversation. I know it's not magic. I know people put work and effort into it. Anyway, I'll just, go through your bios real quick so people know who you are. Bala is a meditation teacher, forest therapy guide, and the founder/steward or Just Love Forest Ashram in Poetry, Georgia. Rooted in the teachings of Ram Dass and the lineage of Neem Karoli Baba, he cares for the 716-acre sanctuary. He guides others through forest therapy, nature-based retreats, grief rituals, and green burial. But more than anything, he listens to the land, to the moment, and to what's ready to unfold. Nivay is the head steward of the Just Love Forest Ashram, where he weaves devotion to Hanuman and Neem Karoli Baba with practices of surrender, honesty, and heart-centered living. Holds space not as a teacher, but as a fellow traveler, learning from the forest, from Sangha, and from the living practice of each moment. His prayer is that community and nature remind us that the heart itself is the true guru. It's a good prayer.
Thank you, Tanner.
So, in case anybody's not familiar, do you want to give some context to what the Just Love Forest Ashram is?
Yeah. So we got and started stewarding this land back in 2020, and it's 716 acres that's under perpetual protection as part of conservation easement, which means basically the trees and the water and various wildlife aspects are protected forever. And as part of that, we run an entire series of different spiritual health and well-being retreats for people to come and attend. The rooting of this is obviously in the lineage of Neem Karoli Baba and Ram Dass, but in that same vein of experience, we welcome all people of all compassionate paths, faiths, spiritual backgrounds to come as an individual and find their own deepening of their spirituality, their own healing that may be metaphysical, physical, and otherwise as part of nature. And in comforting those people, we also offer a full cycle from birth to death in the sense of green burial. So, people can come, they can be part of community, they can be part of service, they can come to individual experiences, and ultimately we help them give their body back to the earth as part of nature.
Yeah. I love the forest so much. I'm so honestly excited to be able to share what you guys are doing through the podcast. And, SCP did a retreat there, I guess a little over a year ago at this point. Even before that, I've spent some time there. That forest is actually the first time I went camping, being from suburban New York. First time camping in a group on my own. I think technically one of the first group retreats I went on for sure. And definitely the first time I had hiked up a mountain, although I'm sure people from the West Coast have given you grief about it being called a mountain.
Definitely Colorado for sure. Bhakti Hill doesn't have quite the same ring, so yeah.
Yeah, it's been really cool over the years to see, because, I was in Atlanta for a little bit, but now that I'm not, there's big gaps between when I get to come and be there in person with y'all. And it's been really cool to see over the years how you've made developments, how every time I come, the land itself also seems to be a little bit different, right? Just before we started recording, you guys were talking about the cicadas and how they're out of season now. You can't really hear them as much. I remember the first time I was there, it being like crazy mosquito season for some reason. And then the next time it was like crazy amount of ticks for a different reason. It's just, the forest is just this living, breathing thing uh, that I personally always feel so grateful to just be in the presence of itself. Um, Last time I was there for the first time, I heard you talk about how when you first got the land, you spent a whole year not building anything, just doing camping, walking around, like being with the land itself. Could you talk a little bit about uh, your philosophy behind that? Because I mean, to me, it's kind of a radical way of living, right? Where you're not so progress focused,
Yeah.
but presence focused, and yeah, like how you've decided to build what you've built over the years.
Yeah. Well, I had the experience I had in 2017, and that experience, from that moment forward, I was always living in my heart. And what that means in a literal sense every day is that I get up, I do my practices, and once I'm in my heart, things happen, things unfold. You get a phone call, a tree falls, the sun comes up, sun goes down. And before that, I have started companies, I have started a nonprofit. And with every one of those experiences, you use the mind and you create an idea using your imagination of something that you have desires to happen. And then you share that imagination with people, and whatever happens, happens. And very much with this, I knew that the rest of my path in this lifetime was to live around surrender, which means to live through the heart. And that's why I got the forest free and clear, and I gave up all my things, sold my house, so that it wouldn't be encumbered by investors. I wouldn't be encumbered by the pressure to make the primary driver to make money, to get people to come. And and so what that's afforded me in the very beginning stages, especially, was to allow each day to unfold and to allow Just Love Forest to be like a young child, and it's growing and it's changing and you're learning it just like it's learning you. And specifically what you're referencing is really tied to the methodology of permaculture. So the permaculture methodology is really to take a full year, and they say a year because that's going to get you through all four seasons, and that's going to bring all different kinds of change to the land, with the water, with the light, with the temperature, with the wind, with the storms, all the things. And then typically the way that we relate to land is it's an asset that we own, and it's therefore something we own. It's therefore our enjoyment, something we possess, and therefore it's there to make us feel good, and to share it with our friends and have fun. That's typically, whether that's hunting, whether that's building a house, whatever it is, it's still kind of the underlying energy behind it. So usually what people do is they go and they say, the question is there a view? Yes, there's a view. What's the best view? Okay, great. Well, let's build a house there. And that's pretty easy to do. And we have a mountain, Bhakti Mountain, that definitely has the best view. And, my impulsiveness could have been like, great, we'll build everything up there. We'll be on top of the mountain. And so I had the ability and the desire to sit with it for a year, and it drastically changed everything that we did. But that second aspect to that, in addition to just looking and listening and waiting and watching storms and watching patterns of wind, is that I actually worked with a team of dowsers. And we often know dowsing to be tied to finding water, but dowsing and finding water is just one aspect, actually, of a way you can access energy to work with land. So the team of dowsers, and they created a map of energetic centers on the land, and that was part of what we did also to influence what was going to happen with where's base camp, where our meditation sites, ultimately where my home is now. And so that was just a process that unfolded. And if you had asked me on day one, and you asked me on the first day of month 6 and the first day of month 12, my story to you, what I felt in that moment, would have been distinctly different. And it's always changing. And the last thing I'll say about that is I have very intentionally worked with a light footprint. So I didn't go out, and my first building's not some, 5,000 square foot dining hall with a concrete foundation, whatever it is, some massive structure. We started really light because the other part of this is serving the people. And so part of it is listening to land and allowing that to bring forth structures. And then the people come, and there's a healing aspect for the people in relationship with the land that's here. And so I've intentionally kept a light footprint because also that was changing in terms of where we could have various things and how people would interact in them. And that changed and that evolved as well. So yeah, it's a living thing, and it will keep changing because most things aren't forever concretized and, set in asphalt. That's a very recent concept.
Yeah. The brain loves to do that, though. The brain loves to concretize things and
I poured
hold on to
concrete. It
them.
will be here forever. Yeah.
This is the direction my living room is set up, and that's how it will be forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is also okay. Consistency is okay if consistency is a necessary support in your life.
Yeah.
I will say, though, over the years, I've very much appreciated your commitment to surrendering and to really listening. There's been a few instances during retreats where, like it's raining, and so plans don't fully go the way we were originally expecting. And Bala, you're very willing to be like, okay, well, here's the new plan. Let's update everybody. Let's continue to keep everybody updated as we continue to change the plan as things unfold. Which is not often, I feel like, a thing that happens during a retreat. I feel like it's very this is the schedule, we're sticking to it, where your process is much more about listening to what's going on with the group and the land itself and adjusting accordingly.
And a big part of that's Maharaji, right? It's either we all sit around and kind of tell each other fun stories and we all say, yeah, we know he's in our life, or we get to experience these things truthfully, which means that things are always going to change. And we assume that it's for the greatest good. And so our choice is to either work with that and have fun or to suffer and bring stress into a circle of a retreat. It's a choice. But for me personally, as those things are changing and they change rapidly and drastically, I feel held. I feel held by Maharaji. I feel that all I can do is laugh. We laugh a lot. Yeah.
Certainly.
Nivay, in your intro, you talked about surrender, and we're talking about changes and everything. I'm curious if you want to share not only maybe your journey of getting to the forest and situating yourself as you are now, but also maybe talking about, since you've started being situated, what changes you've noticed in yourself.
That's a great question. So my journey to the forest, I was living in Atlanta, and I was also coming out of just starting companies with a broken heart. Is quite a difficult challenge. And so I had my personal life that was affecting how I would interact with my staff. I was putting a lot of love into that because I didn't want to take in any of that negativity into my workday. So I really focused on figuring out how to communicate love and create an environment in my workplace. But I found that to be very draining because all the love I was putting into that wasn't really reciprocated back to me. And so it started to get quite stressful. The adrenal glands getting worked out to a point where, there's so much depletion that you've got no time for yourself. And so I came across an Instagram post of a friend of mine who had visited the forest. I saw the pictures of the sunset on Bhakti Mountain with the tents and said, yes, this is what I need to do as quickly as possible. Also because, camping for me was going out and, being a little bit wild in the woods with my friends, right? Not really paying attention to what was surrounding you. Going there to have fun and not going there to listen. And so I came to the forest and I was quite shocked and surprised when I saw a Hanuman Murti in the main yurt structure. Very confused as to why there would be one of those in Rome, Georgia. And so Hanuman's been a small part of my life growing up. I come from a background of Shaivism. So Shiva was a big part of our practices, but I saw a departure of that in my life. Circle back around now to entering the forest and witnessing Bala sing the Hanuman Chalisa. I was quite taken by that. And my aunt, who was visiting at the time, also, we both just looked at each other. And she was trying to sing along with him, and I was mumbling the words. And it wasn't until a few more visits that I was able to sit with him in the woods And he sang there with his harmonium, and I was like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be learning the Chalisa. And so that's now a daily practice, twice a day. If we're lucky, 3, 4, 5 times a day, we'll sing the Chalisa. And so I enter the woods. I start building community. Zander, I think the first time I met you at the SCP retreat here was the first time I was invited as a volunteer, a full-time volunteer.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
know
every
that.
other time I had shown up as a guest that would play around in the kitchen and help out any way I could. And so when I was invited, it was a huge shift because now I'm doing everything on the back end, right? We live off grid for the most part. We have municipal water, we have some solar, but everything else we're kind of having to take care of. You know, you can use your imagination. And so, but I fell in love with those acts of service, and I saw the community get together and chant and sing and have a good time in a sober environment, which is unusual. It's unusual for humans to get together and have no other intentions than just experiencing other humans in nature, right? It wasn't until maybe later in the year of 2024 where my life was just really, I was getting compressed from so many angles, not knowing that a diamond was being created at that point, right? Sometimes we don't look at stress and seeing that what the outcomes potentially could be. So I entered a 40-day sadhana with Bala. I was very excited because I hadn't really connected much with him. He's always, making sure that the container is safe. And, so many questions come with him. It's hard to like have that one-on-one time with him. I was so fortunate last year to make the decision to enter that sadhana. So I entered the forest in February. That was the tail end of my sadhana. And the sadhana was beautiful because that included daily check-ins with him and just reviewing my upagurus, coming up with sankalpa, which I still use to this day. And after the end of my 5-day immersion deep into the forest, where I got to really lay down and be held by the ground, I think that was a big part of my sadhana, which I didn't really communicate, was I would just lay down and be held by her. And I felt for the first time comforted and safe because I would wake up in the morning, immediately have like these thoughts of anxiety and, okay, this is what I've got to do today. This is where I've got to go. But to know, just wake up and just be there. Just be here now in this moment with the forest was very powerful. So I wandered back down the mountain wrapped up in a Maharaji blanket. And I wasn't quite ready to go back to the city and do any of those things I was doing before. And so I stayed, and there was a retreat going on. Bala offered if I could help in the kitchen, and I was like, yes, please. And that was my first real exposure to service again in the kitchen as cooking meals for people. And it was so well received, and I was getting this adoration. And I was like, oh wow, this is great. This is where I could be. And that 1 week led to a 30-day check-in, 60-day check-in. And he kept checking in with me, like, okay, is this where you need to be? We dabbled around caretaking, which was great. I would work a few hours every week and then have my time in the forest, still be connected to the outside world here, but growing in my love for the land and this earth. And so my relationship now has completely shifted. You talked about the different times you've come here, which, there's probably gaps between there. You're looking at seasonal changes. We're looking at weekly changes, right? I would show up to the forest after maybe taking a weekend in the city, and all of a sudden, fireflies, couldn't comprehend how many fireflies were out in such a short amount of time. So the land is constantly speaking to you, constantly communicating with you. And all you have to do is listen and be quiet. And so that's what this container offers, an opportunity to be quiet and to journey from the mind to the heart. So even last night was a good example. We were celebrating Diwali our own way during our Aarti. And I decided to make something special for Prasad. And I walk into the kitchen and I use my mind to look at the resources around me. But I use my heart to come up with what I would create. And he was like, how were you inspired by what you created? Which was, dates and ginger and cardamom and coconut, just little date balls. But no, I was just listening to the heart, and I thought, okay, what would God like to eat today for Prasad, right? And that's how my being has shifted. My being has shifted by just listening to the heart.
Mm. Wow. Honestly, I blown away that the SCP retreat was your first time
in service,
being there in a full-time way.
Yeah.
Because you were just such a natural at it. I mean, you could have easily told me you were doing it like that whole season, the 6 months beforehand. I would have been like, yeah, sure, absolutely.
Well
Have you
received.
just been here in the background and I've missed you every time I've come? Yeah, definitely. And just because you mentioned it, if somebody doesn't know what sankalpa means, could you just define that real quickly?
Yeah, it's kind of like a personal mantra. That's one way to put it. And it's something I would just speak, and it was something I was seeking. So you look at these moments in your life, you look at what your journey has been, and where you are currently, and what are some of the biggest shifts that you need. And mine was simple. Mine was, I am a divine being of peace. Why? Because I was in a situation of chaos, constant chaos. I didn't have any peace. You would wake up in that moment from sleep and be unpeaceful. You would go to bed thinking about the things you needed to do, and then throughout the day, the activities you were performing, just I couldn't find any peace. And so we had spent some time developing what that might have been, and the word peace stuck out. And so my first day at the forest, that's all. That's the only sentence we used to communicate. We sang it, we yelled it, we whispered it. I told it to trees, and it wasn't until probably my final day in the woods there, the day before I came down, where I realized that I am peace, and now my role is to spread that peace, not by preaching, not by telling anyone what to do, but just by them being able to witness me in a peaceful state, right? And so we do things here without formal training. Yes, Bala's got a background in forest meditation, but I've got no training in cooking or holding big spaces. But the way that you get out of God's way, right, is to just take that moment to accept that, okay, this is where you're supposed to be. This is where I'm supposed to be in this moment, and I'm well resourced. I always have everything I need right in front of me, and just slow down. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely know that slow down lesson. It's very present in my life. um, just because you mentioned it, I was going to wait a little bit, but just because you mentioned the Chalice is twice a day and your Diwali celebration, Bala, do you want to maybe talk to what the recent edition of the ashram portion of the forest was inspired by, what it looks like? Yeah, like.
Yeah. So I think for
Yeah.
this audience, that's familiar with Neem Curly Baba, the way this worked for me is had that experience, long story, like all they are, meet Ramdas. Ramdas more deeply introduces me to Neem Curly Baba. Then there's a shift in my life where I realized, like many people in retrospect, there were all these things that were shepherded and helped along by him. And so the way I talk about it now is that it was very clear to me through direct experience that this was always a forest ashram. And it was also very clear to me that this was going to need to be a covert forest ashram in the beginning, just because of the nature of where we are going into a new space in rural Georgia, and allowing it to flower on its own time, not going and declaring anything, allowing love to be the central energy that flows through the forest and allow people to just come in their own way at their own time. And at some point knowing there would be a point of ripening, of maturity, at which then you share the overt message, which has always been true since the beginning. So it was always clear from the beginning that this has been his forest. He came up with the name. He led me to one forest. There wasn't a selection process. It was one piece of land. And my job has just been to be his employee. And the way this unfolded this year was that I knew that we were getting closer to the point that would feel like a natural message to share overtly versus covertly, which just means that when people have come here, like Nivay mentioned, we have always had Hanuman here. We've always sung in Hanuman Chalisa. I always talk about my personal story, and I talk about the love they're going to feel in the forest, but I have just left it there. And the people have all the experiences they have. My experiences, that's for particular reasons, but they have all of their own paths and stories, and I'm sure it's all connected. And so this year, I knew in my heart that we were getting close to that point because it's just a sense, it's a feeling. Again, it's not like an idea. I'm not like this, okay, 2026 should be the year. It's not like that. It's a feeling. And then we had the Ram Dass summer camp this year. And I did everything like I normally do, which is just build the webpage and tell people we're going to have the event, and didn't do anything different. And it just kept growing and growing, and getting more and more signups. And I was like, okay, well, this is going to be like a little miniature festival for us instead. And yeah, it was the largest overnight event we've ever had at the forest. We had about 70 people that came and stayed for the whole weekend. And so I didn't know when I planned it that was going to be the portal that I felt like I was stepping through. But the energy was so high, and it was so pure, and it was so good. And I was already having the feeling in my heart. And then this just naturally evolved in that way. And so as part of that, and you're very much related to this, Sander, as part of that, and with SCP, it's really SCP and those community retreats that brought the more traditional puja and arti to the forest for the first time. That was not something in my personal practice. I carry the Hanuman Chalisa. I work with unconditional love, but puja and arti was not something that was part of my personal practice. It was through the SCP retreats that, a whole team of beautiful beings came and offered that tradition and ritual here. And so we decided, when you came down and helped with the Ram Dass summer camp, that we were going to continue that tradition. There was no master plan that said, every day henceforth from the Ram Dass summer camp, you will forever light this light. It was nothing like that. It just happened naturally. It was just, we gathered all this stuff. People gifted us all the things for it on a permanent basis instead of bringing it in as something that's borrowed. And we did that. And I just said, I feel like we're supposed to continue this. And we did. And so really, we did a soft announcement to the community about 2 months ago, just letting them know that we are officiating this as an overt instead of a covert ashram. And so really, in some ways, it doesn't change a lot. In some ways, it does. But in essence, in summary, we continue to foster the same community in exactly the same way. They come, and on our community weekends that we have once a month, the only big change for them is we do puja and arti as part of our meditation Friday now. But everything else, we're just holding them in unconditional love. We're trying to feed them well. We're giving them opportunity to serve each other. All of that was always there. So in some ways, I think for people who have never been, or maybe they've been once and they, didn't really pay attention, maybe they're like, oh, Forest Ashram, what? To the people who come, they're like, oh, okay, so he's like sharing the real story with the world in a more direct way. So, so it's really our commitment. People come and they go, and he and I are here, and it's our commitment to Hanuman and Neem Karoli Baba to hold this ritual in the morning and the evening. And we are starting what we call Hanuman Tuesdays now, where anyone can come to the forest just on a donation basis, and we allow them to have their own time for personal practice in nature. We do free forest and nature therapy. We feed them really well. So that's Hanuman's Day, and so we're doing that to honor that. And then in addition, this next year, well, actually starting next month actually is our first one. We're doing a heart offering model for a certain type. So we have Just Love Forest Ashram retreats that are specific to this. And the model is pay what you can. And uniquely, once you leave, you can change the amount you paid up or down. So once you feel like you received the medicine from the forest and the experience has been what it's been for you, if you feel generosity for what you've been given and you have the financial means and that's aligned, we'll greatly receive your gift. And without attachment on our part, if you came and you then realized that actually that was kind of a financial stretch for you, and you got caught up in the idea of what a forest would do for you, and the reality is that you needed to pay less, then you pay less and we give you that money back. And so we're integrating that as part of the surrender and part of the freedom of the work that goes on here. Green burial remains the same, although we've made it more accessible financially, and we've committed to allowing people to be buried here that might not have the financial means, so just extending that even more. So in essence, It's changing retreats. Anyone can come to puja and arti in the morning or evening. They just need to request an invitation. There's no charge for that. They can come and stay in the tent and just donate some money if they wish to. So
Sure.
yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
that's the crux of it for now.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I didn't realize because a satsang member Alex and I sat in that you're sitting in now on the floor and like sorted through a whole big essentially care package from the temple in Taos of just different puja things and everything, sorting it through, being like, what's this, can we get this sticker off, does this need to be cleaned, what is this thing? I didn't realize how much that was going to blossom and really help to transform the space in a whole new way.
And
so it's really cool
it's
to
transformed us too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
say more.
Say more?
Yeah.
Do you want to say more?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I think we use the analogy of bookends in our day. So we wake up around 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning, and we come to the shrine. We start by bathing the murti, adorning it with sindor, creating the space. I think Sitaram does such a wonderful job of explaining Arti as a date with the divine, right? And so it's that moment before anything from the day comes in, right? Where we can have this precious time to sing. And we're singing songs that are so universal, right? Anybody can look at the words and the translations and see that it's a song just about reverence and service and appreciating how beautiful the divine is. And then we close it. We open it. To anyone who's new to this. You can add your shrine, a piece of artifact that's sacred to you to the shrine. We'll bow to it, receiving blessings from it. We are constantly evolving our shrine. When we visit temples that resonate with us, gurus that resonate with us, we'll add that to the shrine. When it's time for an artifact to pass on, and when it's had its time on our shrine, we'll treat it respectfully. So it's this organic, fluid thing that we've slowly developed. We're always trying to tweak it and refine it to where it feels more authentic to ourselves, right? We're not doing anything that doesn't feel authentic. Like, if we're questioning why we're doing it, then we'll dig deeper. We will give to the oxtail. And when I saw it, I was like, no, that is something I'm really not interested in. Why is this massive oxtail or date with silver part of my puja practices? And
It's quite massive.
yeah, it's massive. But then we dug deeper into it. Oh, well, if you're going to fan the divine, right? If you're going to perform service to the divine, then what is the most beautiful thing that you could use? And then that immediately shifted my understanding of puja and arti. Yeah. Like, I'm here fanning God, and how would I do it? And so each time I offer incense, I'm not just wiggling incense around. No, it's a bow at the end. It's a curtsy, if you will. Because each one of these steps now means something to me, right? It's not just a rule book I'm following that, SCP sent this over, Sitaram came up with this. No, there's intentions there. And each thing's connected to something that you can then take within your being and carry throughout the day. And then regardless of what happened during your day, before you lay your head on your pillow, you've got that other bookend to remind you.
I love that so much. Wow. Yeah, I love that metaphor that I feel like I first heard from Pav, but has probably existed outside of that, I would imagine. As brilliant as he is, and it is, I don't think he came up with it, but the idea of RT being this like candle, like literally, right, this light, like if we want to say originated in Kanchi just from the Maharaji family, and then like lights Taos, which then lights Maui, which then lights the candle of the forest. Like, it's just this beautiful thing that, although is unique to every single place you go and do it with, touches on the same sort of like internal or like primordial vibration, really, that you're doing all these things to connect with. So yeah, I love that y'all are doing that.
Well, thank you for being a big part of bringing the ritual and tradition here.
I'm just doing what Maharaji asks me, I guess. I kind of want you to talk more about the green burial, but I have other questions. But but I actually haven't heard you talk about the green burial, that stuff that much. So do you want to talk about that, or should I ask more other questions? Or
Yeah, I can talk about it a bit.
I'm just curious, like, like my grandfather recently passed a few months ago, and it was a very traditional service, and he got cremated. So like, we weren't even in the room when that happened, right? Like, there's like a lot of separation, it seems like, between people and the experience of death that can happen. Not probably as much as it was back when Ram Dass first started his work in death and dying, but still it's a vast majority of people and their relationship with it. So I'm curious, like, with the inspiration behind green burial, like, how can that, like, how does that maybe change one's connection with death and with that transition in a life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for those of us of a spiritual nature who are listening to this podcast, we say a lot of things all the time about, like, I am not this body, I'm not this mind. All of our practices kind of revolve around that actualization of those realities, right? In our experience as a soul and a body. And still, we're in Western culture where society tells us that death is fear. And in many cases, it's the end of the road in a myopic way. Either you're good or you're bad one time and you go somewhere. And there's also just complete phobia of the physical body after the moment that the soul and the spirit leaves it. We have this enculturated idea that, once the soul leaves the body, it's like, oh, oof. We don't want to be around that. And to your point, there's so many layers of separation between the experience of the soul and the spirit leaving the body and the body being the sacred vessel. And so I think part of green burial is, many people don't know a lot of these things. So you can have a body in your home for up to 3 days on ice without any kind of negative decomposition, without any kind of complication, if you work with a death doula and you do it properly.
Right, that's like what they do with Ram Dass.
Yeah, and so that's something that can be done, and so often what happens, to your point, is there's a moment of death, spirit leaves the body, and then immediately there's kind of this panic. Who do we call? What do we do? We got to get the body. What do we do? And so then immediately the calls are made, and then usually within minutes or an hour, maybe the body is taken away, and then it's taken for cremation, or it's taken to be, have chemicals added to preserve it for a casket burial. And so part of this is working with death doulas so that you can work with the friends and the family who are going through the journey with the person who's leaving their body so that they can properly grieve. Right? Most of the trauma that we hold in our modern society is because we don't have the ability to work through trauma and the grief at the time that things happen. Right? So someone dies, they leave your body, and then immediately the body's taken away, and then you're having all these thoughts and emotions, and you can't really fully connect with the moment. And probably the most sacred experience of that person's life, like you can't be with it, like taking the body away. So everything just becomes an idea from that point on. So part of this is going back to traditional grieving. There was nothing in tribal society where, someone died and they whisked the body away. Regardless of how the body ultimately was transitioned, whether it's cremation or something else, there's nothing where they would quickly take the body away. You would sit with the body so that you could fully realize and be fully present with the fact that the spirit has left the body. That this is not where the spirit is. The soul and the spirit have left this piece of earth that's held as a body, and you get to know that by being present with the body. And we're sorely lacking, traditional grieving rituals and circles and things. So that's part of it. Part of green burial is allowing yourself to be present with the experience fully and to be with the body and to commune with that. The second part of this is the ecological part of it. So most people don't realize that all bodies before the Civil War were buried in what we now call green burial. But people also refer to it as traditional burial because it was traditional. It was only because of the Civil War, for the first time ever, we have bodies from the North and the South, and the South and the North. And they had to devise a way for them to be transported back to their home of origin. And the only way they could do that was to use chemicals to put in the body so that it was preserved and could be shipped. There was a realization as that became more normal, like, well, this is quite a good business. And so the marketing became, if you care for your loved ones, you'll preserve the body. And at that time, and I'm not making this up, at that time, there was still a lot of fear of zombies that would steal bodies. And so if you really loved your relative, you would preserve the body and you would protect it in a casket in a vault and concrete in the ground. Because if you didn't, something might happen to the body. And that is the roots and the birth of the modern funeral business.
Interesting.
So, we're sort of hearing like, oh, green burial is like this new thing. It's like, no, we're just not continuing to play the charade that if you love someone, you fill them full of chemicals and you have to protect them in a concrete vault inside of a coffin inside of the earth. And so that's really only been a recent thing since the 1860s that was even a thing. It's really going back to what we've always done. And you take the body, you bury it within 3 feet of soil to protect it from animals, but you're composting. I mean, that's reality. You're composting. So you have the body high enough up because you need oxygen and you need all of the natural things in the first layers of soil to compost. And within 45 days, there's nothing left but bones and some teeth. And the rest of your body is completely turned back into soil. And the last thing I'll say is that it will offend some people, but it's incredibly greedy not to give your body back to the earth. Like there's so much nutrients and benefit to nature and your body. Like your body is filled with like the most rich nutrients you could possibly imagine that was given to you from and by the earth. You are walking earth. And then to take that gift and then not allow it to go back to the earth anytime soon. It's just, there's something there that doesn't represent sort of full cycle of reciprocity. So, there's a givingness to it. There is this earth, I am this earth. This earth has served me well in this spacesuit configured in this way. And I'm done with it. I'm not here. I'm on to other things. So I'm giving it back to where it came from. And I celebrate that. I'm not afraid of that. It's not something I have any kind of rejection to. So in essence, that's really the spirit of green burial. Also, just from an ecological standpoint, and I know people have different beliefs about cremation, and that's fine. And there's different traditions that have beliefs, and that's all good and well, and that's perfect. And also, cremation is actually very, very bad for the environment. There's an immense amount of carbon that's released every time that we do cremation. So there is truly an ecological viewpoint analysis from a scientific standpoint, just from the carbon footprint of burning a body. It's tremendous.
Yeah.
You also use the word celebrate. And so we have 716 acres of land here. And we didn't pick areas that are in the corners and inaccessible. We picked Bhakti Mountain, one of our most sacred sites. Why? Because we go there and we host retreats. We celebrate around the fire with our loved ones.
Yeah.
Right? That's like our community members. We want to go visit them. This is a community that we're building. You're part of this community, part of the satsang. And what better place than to be right on top of the mountain, watching a sunset with your loved ones, right? And celebrating and dancing, drum circles, kirtan with our loved ones. And if that's not for you, if you'd rather be in a peaceful place, then we have something called the sacred forest, which is also on the land. Which is land that needs to be developed. And that's the other piece, right? Like we're also tending to the land. This land was previously, for foresting. And so we need to go in, we need to clear some of the overgrowth. We need to trim down. And that's our way of also stewarding this land. So yeah, it's full circle.
Wow. And that's actually such a great segue into my next question. But I'll say like I appreciate that ecological consideration aspect to it for sure. I know in my everyday, I'm currently living in Brooklyn. Um, it's a little bit of a hike for me to like go near a tree some days. And even when I get near that tree, it's not often nature that I feel even comfortable like taking my shoes off. Whereas like when I'm in the forest, like I could walk around if it's not raining barefoot for like 3 days and be totally okay with it. Um, it's been an interesting consideration for me. I'll share because I was still when they were growing up having being told to consider like the impact we're leaving as an individual, and then growing older and recognizing that as an individual, my own carbon footprint like could by no means fix what the few corporations who are responsible for what like 80% of our of the damage that's being done, um and feeling so like disheartened by that, and then now almost in a way circling back around and being like, okay, well, I can't account for the amount of damage that these companies are doing, but at least in my everyday, like what can I do to like not produce more waste on top of that? Like what can I do to care for what's in front of me and not just use things that are disposable on a large basis, right? What can I do to leave no trace when I do go out and on a hike like upstate or something? So I don't know. I just appreciate that consideration because it is a hard thing to kind of grapple with on a personal and then social level. And then you mentioned stewarding right at the end. Again, when I was writing these questions, I recognized that like I don't think I had heard the term like stewarding land before coming to the forest, at least not in the same way that y'all refer to it there. I actually Googled the definition just because I was curious. So I was like, I understand what it means, but what's the actual definition? And what I don't have it written down, but like it talked about it more in like a flight steward, like somebody who brings you your drinks and something like that. I've seen it with both you guys and everybody, the other people who are considered stewards of the land, like how there is this like deeper relationship of that goes beyond like there is a give and a take type thing, but there is a deeper relationship of like care. So I don't know which one of you wants to start. You guys can both kind of answer this maybe. I was curious, like how would you explain your role of stewarding? And then also how can people be a good steward for what's around them?
Yeah, I'll start off and then hand it over to you a little bit. So the concept of stewardship is that, we are really tenders of the land. And there's a phrase called wild tending. Wild tending has indigenous roots and lineage. Wild tending is more around reciprocity. And so we're not caretakers. And so I would define a caretaker as someone who takes care, which means that something needs care and we're going to take care of it for them. And so it's like, just like you would maybe take care of an older parent in need, right? They have needs, you're there. Stewardship is a living relationship, and it's around reciprocity, and it's around playfulness and curiosity. And so we do things that we feel are helpful for the land based on things that we observe and based on things that we've learned. We definitely don't do a lot of things that we're told the land needs from forestry experts and other people. Some of them yes, some of them no, but it's very selective because even those practices have questionable roots and questionable agendas in terms of how they're thinking of land as an asset and as a transaction and as something that's going to result in something. And so the wild tending related to stewardship is I learned that there's little things I can do that can help you. And I also know that there are little things that you're going to do to help me. And the more that I pay attention to that and I give and I offer that, the more I know you're going to give back to me in return. So we're helping each other. And that's more what stewardship is. It's that ever living reciprocal relationship. And so steward of the land is someone who's listening, but someone who's in relationship. And so sometimes we do things and sometimes we don't. And it's really based on, it's no different than a personal relationship. It was like, is this helping the land, and how do we know? And who told us that it would? And what's our actual experience? And what are we receiving from that in our own life? So I would say like that's how I characterize the concept of stewardship that we live here.
I'll go back to your analogy of the plane. We're not the ones flying the plane. We're not the ones fixing the plane, right? We are just tending, and we're paying attention to the needs, subtle needs, right? We're not making drastic changes to the land. And it's also knowing that, what we've done here, we have yurts and structures that's taken the place of trees, right? And so being a steward here means, okay, how am I making sure that I'm giving back the best that I can based on what I've taken, right? Asking permission before taking, saying thank yous to the land, praying to the land. We did a despacho ceremony a few weeks ago as a community event, and all it was not a prayer for something that we needed to receive. No, we created this bundle of love to just offer to the land.
Mm. 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 I wanted to bring up this aspect, and it's kind of been teased in a few answers and all that sort of stuff. But for me, coming to the forest, each time is a part of this. Each time it's like a little bit different of a lesson, but this curriculum, if you want to use the Ram Dassian term, this curriculum of sovereignty and like what it means to be rooted in your own being. I don't know. I'm just so curious because it is for me so tied in with the forest. Like, how does that work? How did that even come up as like a term to name even? Especially because, it's so interesting because, like I said, for me, it's been a big part of the conversation about sovereignty. But at the same time, being in the forest is also always about like being in community with other people. And on one level, maybe those things are seemingly contrast, but they actually like kind of sustain each other in this way. So I don't know. I just wanted to hear you talk a little bit more about sovereignty.
Yeah, I do talk about sovereignty a lot. And the reason I talk about sovereignty is because I feel like it is the way of living truthfully from the heart. And tied to that, a lot of what I talk about is interdependence in comparison to independence. So much of our country rhetoric is around independence, right? I can do what I want, how I want it, when I want to. And that's not interdependence. That's actually the opposite. That's a polar opposite of interdependence. And so interdependence is when you are a sovereign being, which means that you are listening and living from your own heart. So it doesn't mean you're listening and living from your own mind. It means that you have ability to connect to your heart by doing practices, by being intentional. And you're taking that wisdom from the heart. And that is overriding other messages from the mind of your own mind and other people's minds. And so that's a whole longer conversation. But part of living in the heart, if that is the true wisdom through which you're living, is that there's a compassionate wisdom that's innate as part of that. So from living from the heart and that being sovereign means that once you know that deep truth about how you should be living, what the forest is offering you, what you're offering the forest, you should move forward in that, because part of the innate wisdom that's shared in living from the heart is also love and compassion for other life, plants, trees, rivers, streams, human beings, all equal as part of that, as a relationship with nature. So the sovereignty is getting to your heart. Your heart, if that's a truthful experience for you, has a compassionate wisdom for all life. And ultimately, all of that combines to the realization that you are nature. You're not part of it only. You're not going to observe it. You're not going to extract from it so you can go back to what you're doing. Like, you are nature. That is our underlying mantra of the forest. When you realize that you are nature, you're not observing it, you're not protecting it, you're not defending it. You are it. You are nature. 100% of the survival of the species and continuation of the world as we know it with human life comes down to self-love. Because when you realize that you are nature and you're living from your heart, which means that you love yourself, it means that you will love all of creation. And that's not a didactic teaching. That's not something that you're going to get a workbook and learn. That's a direct felt experience. And so that is the essence of the medicine that the forest can offer. As again, not we just told you this on a podcast. It's a direct experience. It's a felt wisdom. And so sovereignty, the heart, the realization that you are nature, from my perspective, that's where all the healing emanates from at every level.
Hmm. This is kind of the last thing I want to ask y'all and kind of wrap it up. How do you have any idea of any sort of practices or I don't know if even methods is what I'm going for here, but again, being in a very different physical location than you guys, in the middle of maybe the most urban city in the country, there is a lot of disconnect from nature. I feel it in my own personal being, and I imagine there are many others who feel the same. If somebody was to come to you and ask, how can I reconnect with my own sovereignty? How can I connect with what little nature I have available? I don't know, like, how would you guys respond to that?
Fly to Georgia.
I'm going to start with something pragmatic and add to it. With nature and forest therapy, you can have nature experiences in your own home. Should you try to get out into nature in its raw form whenever you can? I believe so, when you have the opportunity. And the reality is that some of us won't. Some of us never have. Some of us may never will, and that's just the reality of that particular lifetime. There is practice within nature and forest therapy where it's kind of like you're creating your altar, but it's of all natural things. So, we have this idea that, a relationship with something other than yourself as a plant is only amplified when you're out in a forest. But the same care, the same ability to see infinite life in it, the same intimacy that you have with it is just because it's another life form. And so if you live in an apartment in New York, you can do forest and nature therapy inside by creating basically an altar of plants and little trees and things. And the key thing in doing that is that you're not just doing it for decoration. You're actually, there's practices to sit with these plants, to touch their leaves, to be with them. So that is totally possible. That is a practice of forest and nature therapy that people are interested in. I'm sure people have talked about it on the internet, but it is a real thing. And I have done work with people of that nature who have had some of those barriers before. But do you want to talk more broadly about practices to foster sovereignty?
I think Surya Namaskara is a great one. Yeah. So, the sun rises every single day without us having to think about it, without us having to worry about it, right? All we can do is go outside and have the sun watch you rise for a change, right? How do you rise? And then offer water. So we do it often here as part of our practice, where I'll take, ideally a copper vessel, like something you would use for puja, or a mug, and raise it to the sun, and use whatever mantra resonates with you, whatever prayer resonates with you. Offer it to the sun, and then pour it forward, and watch that stream pass, and the sunlight pass through that stream into your eyes, and let that be your reconnection with nature there. And then, we're so used to rolling up magazines and attacking bugs and stuff inside our home. How about you get a cup and gently take that creature out? I think my shift has been that, right? I don't kill anything out here, not a mosquito, not a fly, because they are a part of me and I'm a part of them. So there's another way you can reconnect with nature. Yes. Take your shoes off if there's a patch of dirt and watch the sun. That's another way you can elevate that practice. But there's lots of ways that you can connect with the magnetic fields of the earth, right? Take a wind bath, just stand outside.
A wind bath?
Yeah, just stand outside and just feel the wind on your skin.
Oh.
Yeah, there's so many things that you can do in a city. to reconnect.
And Zander, you've been here before. We start forest therapy the same every time, where we get into our senses, each one of them. One that's really effective for people that they don't expect is when you breathe in, you deeply smell the soil.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so you can go out to a park and bring collections of soil back to your home. There's so many things that go on with the body and the mind and the senses when you breathe the earth. So that's another great one. Wake up in the morning, if you're in an apartment and you're feeling disconnected, like deeply breathe the earth, and it just activates so many things in your effectively.
Yeah, there's definitely a few people around Queens who have witnessed me scoop up a handful of dirt and just shove it in my face.
We're doing good work.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you just related to anything or not related that you want to share while we're in this platform?
No, I just, not to brown nose, I'm just super grateful for SCP and the work that you and Sita Ramdas and everyone's done. I mean, it's been very helpful to us in a lot of different ways. And I'm just grateful that you all have created as much educational material that you have for so many people. I think as much as we can, each using our own abilities to share and spread these traditions and rituals in a very chaotic, distracted world is hugely important. So yeah, just huge thanks to the entire community there.
There's the SCP event that we're hosting next year as well.
Oh, yeah. So for context, because I have no idea when this is actually going to come out, we're recording this in October of 2025. In March of 2026, that's correct, right? You look okay. I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure. In March of 2026, Sitaram is hosting, co-hosting with the forest, a deep sadhana journey. Which, if that hasn't happened yet, you can head over to the website to look for more details. Yeah, it's been really cool for me to see how synchronous the forest and SCP's work is becoming over time. Because for me, coming to the satsang from a younger perspective, it's cool to really be a part of this almost like next generation of things that have started existing post Ramdas, or maybe a little during Ramdas, but have really grown and come into their own since. So yeah, it's been really great, and I'm super thankful that Maharaji has put us all on the same football field together on the same team. I don't know what the other team is, but
Starting with
again, in a territory I don't know how to navigate. Thank you so much for coming and talking and being on the podcast.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for including us. It's been fun.
If people want to come and find out more about the forest, more about the work you're doing, they can go to justloveforest.com.
Justloveforest.com, and they're always free to email me as well at Bala, BALA, at justloveforest.com. Happy to help and support any way in or outside of the forest.
And you're also on Instagram, though I appreciate what you post. I don't think you always check everything immediately, but it's also there as a resource to see what you guys are up to. Even listening to the Sacred Community podcast, if you want to see some of the sessions from that retreat SCP did at the forest in 2024, you can head over to the website, to the YouTube, and our media library. We have a bunch of resources from that retreat and from beyond. sacredcommunityproject.org. This has been this episode. Rate, review, comment. I don't know what platform you're on to do the appropriate things, but interact with this, I guess. Thank you for listening. May any merits accumulated during this interview be of the benefit to all beings towards liberation. Until next time, Ram Ram.
Ram Ram. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow.